Okay, welcome back. I believe there was a temporary interruption to my internet, and so I just lost a bit of signal there, and it's telling me that it's back now. So, welcome to the stream. And today's stream is all about the question that keeps coming up with what I specifically teach and do. This comes up quite a lot, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background as we go through. So tonight's question, and it's night for me, by the way, depending on where you are in the world, it may still be broad daylight, but for me, it's Saturday night, and it's for many of my audience, it's now Sunday night. And so we are now in a position where we can talk to people all around the world and have a great time doing this, no matter when we're talking. So the question comes up, do we really need great lighting to speak live online? And it's really quite fun to answer that because the person who was involved in that conversation teaches something slightly different to what I teach, but they do cross over into this area of helping not only coaches but experts to also speak live on camera and to be effective and impactful when they're doing that so that they can offer their services, especially if they're offering high ticket offers, so that they can offer that to their audience in a way that allows both them and their audience to get the most out of the engagement. And I'm just continuing to check things to make sure that everything is working live here, and it is at the moment. So that's great. So let me pose another way of looking at this. And the answer is, of course, in short, well, one could say not always. And the thing about this is, if I ask you to consider television studios, what do television studios do? Do they just say, well, you know what, we're going to put our presenters out there in any light that's available? Well, they don't. They don't have to do great light, but they choose to. They actually send teams out, people with cameras, great high quality cameras, and they also send them out with high quality microphones, and they also have portable lighting so that if the presenter, who is like the expert who brings everything to life and adds, say for instance for a sports event, they can actually do that on a location. People who are even broadcasting from zones of conflict, they will often utilize some sort of high quality camera team to still support them. They won't necessarily just use their mobile phone and run and gun it, as they call it, but they'll actually use some kind of portable, high quality camera to still record what's going on. And to me, when this question is asked, it's a bit like thinking about, the Olympics. We all know of these different sporting events that happen. Well, let me ask you this. Do Olympians or, say intercollegiate sports athletes, do high school athletes go and run at a stadium and just use their regular training shoes, or do they use spiked training shoes, or the specifically spike track shoes? Which do they use? You see, the question is they don't use off the shelf trainers because they know that there's a reason for getting that performance. They want to make sure that they perform at the highest level that they can. And consider, in the upcoming World Cup football, soccer for those who are from the US and countries that call it soccer, it's actually football, and you'll see World Cup football. If all 48 countries turned up, do you think they're going to leave their studded football boots behind? They call them football boots. They used to be called football boots because they were boots. They're like shoes now. They're not as high up the ankle anymore, but we still call them football boots. So just to avoid any confusion there. But do you think they're going to turn up with just regular training shoes and play, or do you think they're going to turn up with the right gear, football boots, or studded football boots, which will help them to perform? Or for that matter, why bother to play on perfectly manicured grass? Why bother to do that? Or AstroTurf, as the terms are these days. All of this sort of high quality football surfaces. Why not just play on dirt? When I was a kid, I played on dirt surfaces. Why not? It should be okay. Well, the reason why we are seeing these people performing at the highest levels are performing with what we would call the essential, the right kit. For them, it's absolutely essential, right? It's essential kit for them to perform at the highest level. And so television studios use high quality lighting, high quality cameras, stage managed lighting, a stage that's presented for the presenter to perform at their best because they're trying to work with the audience. It helps to allow the audience to listen, to really connect with, and to build trust and confidence with the presenter. That's really what it's all about. They don't need high quality lighting. They don't need cameras that are broadcast quality. They don't need a team behind doing all of this. They could just do all of this by mobile phones. In fact, for that matter, people creating blockbuster movies, they could just use the lower tech gear, convenient gear, stuff that everybody knows how to use. And yes, there have been, before anyone comments, yes, there have been movies made with camcorders going back in the day. There was a movie, I won't mention the name here today, but there was movies that were made, and I'm not talking here about, the made for television movies or cable movies. I'm talking about movies that were made for the cinema, that were made on camcorders, as we called them back in the day. And yes, there have been films where sections of the films have been made using mobile phones. And I'm sure it's not going to be long before some blockbuster film is made on a mobile phone. Not going to discount that. The point that I'm making here is that we choose these types of equipment which are performing at a certain level, at a high quality, for reasons. There are lots of different reasons why television studios use what they use, because of the power to present their presenters in the best light, and no pun intended, but yes, it's in the best light with the best audio, because of all of the benefits, all of the connection that comes out of it. And if you're selling high ticket coaching, if you're offering your clients the room to transform, then you're actually in the same space as these television studios, as people performing at the highest level of their craft, such as the sports people that I mentioned earlier on. And the same concept applies to you. You don't need a studio, but it helps. Because you see, if any of those teams or athletes turned up and they were just wearing the regular stuff that we all wear, I guarantee you that the competition would wear the stuff that allows them to perform at the highest level. And then what would we say? We would question the logic of those expert performers who chose not to take advantage of the highest quality gear that could help them to get the best performance. See, you're in the performance game. Let's understand that. As a coach, as an expert, we are in the performance realm. And especially when we're offering to help other people to get the level of performance that we know we can help them to get. See, all of this comes down to the simple question of creating consistency at the beginning. Now, during this series, which you might not have seen the earlier parts of the series, I'll make sure that I post some of them so that you can see the earlier parts of this series. But this series is all about starting off with three key elements. Is that, yes, we need to, if we are coaches selling high ticket offers, experts selling high ticket offers, we need to get out there and offer this thing that we refer to as consistency, right? We need to get consistent at the beginning, because it's the consistency that starts off the process of us getting out there in front of our audience. We get better by applying consistency. It's that practice that we put in. It's that step and staircase that we take towards getting good at what we do. And then after we have become consistent and we have managed to keep doing this for long enough, we get what we call confident. We become confident. And then people look at us and they say, but you've been doing this forever. You look like you've been doing this forever. And if you talk to many people who are in their game, they perform at the highest level, they'll tell you, no, I know you might think I'm a natural at this. I know it might appear today, but go back and look at me when I first started, and you'll realize that I needed to get the confidence because I was consistent. And after the consistency leads to confidence, then finally, when we are confident and we're presenting high quality material, we gain this thing called authority. And this is when we look at people and we see them in any industry and we say, this is the person who's a go-to person. This is the person who has performed at that level for the longest period of time. And we refer to them as the authority in that area. Just think about that for a moment. The authority starts with consistency. We need to keep doing this over and over and over again. But let's go right back to what stops most coaches and most experts from becoming consistent in the first place. They don't like the way that the lighting makes them look. And so that stops them from feeling the sense of, I can do this, before they even start, because they're worried, they're concerned about how people might perceive them, about this thing called judgment, how we all feel being judged, how we all worry about the way that other people might see us and perceive us. And so there is that big concern that all of us have, and it's all of us, let's be real here. Everybody struggles with this at some point. The question of, am I enough? Yeah, you are enough, but I can't just say that and you feel enough, right? Let's be honest. We do the consistency, get the confidence, and then we become the authority at that level. And just to kind of take you back a little bit to from a story of my past, one of the things that I remember, turning up one day to play football in high school. It was raining, really raining, but as a young teenager, you couldn't stop us from playing football. When we got an opportunity to play at school, we played, and it was hammering down with rain. And I didn't have studded football shoes, football boots. And I was there running around, and I remember trying to put my foot on the ball as I was in a chase to get the ball. And someone got there before me, but my leading foot was still in midair as I was about to come down on and make contact with the ball, and the ball was just moved, and the angle now for me to land wasn't right any longer, and it was like an ice rink. I was skating along until gravity took the hold of the rest of my body and brought me down in the wet mud. And I can tell you, it wasn't any fun being in that scenario. And that's, let's face it, what most of us are afraid of. We're afraid of making that mistake and other people see, and then we feel this sense of judgment, not being enough, not having enough to offer to the world. But had I a pair of football boots, I would have felt much more secure and capable of remaining upright, even in the scenario where someone else removed the ball before my foot could get planted against it. And so this is really what I want you to sort of start to think about for yourself, is what's stopping you from being consistent? What's stopping you from even making that first step? And I can remember going back to when I first started. When I first started, this was back in 2019, and one of my mentors challenged me. Well, it didn't just challenge me, but challenged everybody. But yes, it was a challenge that I took personally, to go live within about 30 days. And I was thinking of my topic, and I was going through all the things that I could talk about, and I kept removing one topic after the other, because I kept thinking to myself, well, I know a lot about these topics, but I don't really feel like I'm an expert in any of these things that I'm talking about. Yes, I could talk about my expertise, but for whatever reason, I was putting my expertise aside. I just wanted to go live with something simple. And the deadline was approaching more, closer and closer. And I was putting off this going live because my mentor was encouraging us all to put in a Facebook group that we were going to go live and let everybody know so that they could support us on our live, that they could pop in and give us that moral support on our live engagement. And as you would imagine, as with most of us, it was literally like there was about 2 days to go. And I realized that on the last day that I could actually stay within time, I was going to be traveling. I was going to be on a train, and I wasn't going to be getting home until very, very late that night. You know, the deadline, as we would put it, would expire, and I would have failed in my commitment to go live within 30 days. And so I decided 2 days before, I was in a hotel delivering training, as at that point I was on a contract training and just staying in hotels for most of the week, and it was quite an interesting time. And I really couldn't get good signal in that room that I was in. I had to go to the window, and I went into that window space, and I was going live with just a tablet, effectively. Just a tablet. I didn't have anything else with me. I was just going to use my tablet. And so the camera on the tablet was all I could use. And it just so happened that, you know, as a person who's a professional photographer as well, I'm very concerned about how I portray myself when it comes to any kind of lighting. And being at that window, I was now having to be at the mercy of the most unpredictable kind of lighting in a country where the skies are the most unpredictable of any of the countries that I have ever been to. In the UK, you never know. Cloud cover can be there in 5 minutes and gone. Or you can have beautiful clear skies, and then 5 minutes later you've got cloud cover. And as the clouds were going in and out, covering the sun, letting the sun shine for a little bit, my picture, which was going live at the time, was going from shade to bright, to shade to bright. And I was very conscious of this, being a photographer. And it wasn't a comfortable experience. But you know what? I did it. I decided to go live because I was allowing all of the different elements to get in the way. I was allowing all kinds of excuses. And were they good excuses? Maybe. You know, not having a good topic is a good enough reason not to go live. Not being certain about your topic is a good enough reason not to go live. But ultimately, when you promise yourself and you speak in front of other people to say, yes, I will go live within 30 days. Well, now what's at stake? Well, you've got a reputation, really. And you start to, even if you ignore that reputation externally, you start to build that reputation internally. And so we start to tell ourselves, yeah, we never really follow through on the things that we say we're going to do. And so we just create this constant conversation with ourselves until we one day identify as that individual who we say we do things, but we just don't. We don't follow through. And I would like to say to you that that is what the consistency is all about. You see, when you have great lighting and you're not worried about the sound and you're not worried about how the technology might impact you, you know what you do? You go live anyway, right? You do what you've got to do, just as what happened to me at the beginning of this presentation. The internet had a little hiccup, and so I had to go and make some changes. But I have the confidence to know that regardless of that, once I get back on, I can just carry on as normal. And I don't have to worry about this, because what? The least thing on my mind is how the lighting looks. The next least thing on my mind is how it sounds. What about my background? I'm not worried about any of those. So coming back to the question at the beginning is, does the lighting really matter? Do you need lighting? Well, the answer is, well, not always. You know, you don't have to need lighting, because if it was lighting that would have stopped me from doing my first live with that strange sunlight going in and out and disappearing and creating interesting effects for me. If it was all just about the lighting, then I wouldn't have gone live. I would have said, yeah, you do. You can just go live regardless. You can just do this. But here's the difference. Here's where it's different. And for most of my audience, the coaches, they are already going live. They're going live in front of their audiences. But the challenge that they're starting to experience now is that they're not really converting as much as they'd like to. They want to convert, but they're finding that something somewhere that they can't quite explain is just not landing the way they'd like. And it's just like that scenario with the television situation again. If you have a choice of television stations, you have a choice of movies. And for those of you who can remember VHS, well, you have a choice of watching it on VHS, or you have a choice of watching it on Blu-ray, 4K. Which version are you going to choose? You have a 480 pixels quality, or you have a 1080 pixels quality. And so you're going to ask yourself that same sort of question: which version do I watch? Well, if you've got a tiny screen and very low bandwidth, you'll take the 480, right? We're never going to complain about that. But when we have the option, what do we choose? We choose the higher quality because it enriches our experience of that performance, of that video, of that speaker, of that engagement. And this is really what we're talking about here. If you are trying to be a more effective, high quality, high ticket speaker as a coach, as an expert, then let's get down to brass tacks and do what we know is the right thing. Because if we're not doing it, if we're choosing to avoid doing it, then your competitors, the people who are also in the area, who are doing what you do, who may not have the same expertise that you have. They may be similar, but you might be a bit more nuanced in some areas that your clients really need right now. But they're seeing you, and they're seeing your client, the options to you, and they're choosing the option which is offering them the better experience when they're engaging with you. So let's just work from that space. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't need to. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. And you don't need to worry about having a pretty background behind you as well, because this may surprise you, but after taking tens of, maybe hundreds of thousands, I would say, headshots by now, one of the things that I learned from leaders within very big organizations, some of these are names that you would know, and also taking photographs to sell properties based on just the interior alone, I learned that the background can be just as much of a distraction as not having great lighting. So keep things really simple. And I know we want, my coaches, I know you want these very pretty backgrounds, but what you really want to do is to keep your audience focused on you and the way you're impacting them and helping them to move forward. And the way that I do that is through using something that I've called the Look Good, Sound Great formula. It's where I've pulled together all of my years of knowing about lighting and photography, what I've learned from, as I said, hundreds of thousands of headshots. I couldn't tell you exactly how many because I started shooting back in the days of film. That's another story in and of itself. But yes, it's a lot. It's a lot. And well into the hundreds of thousands by now, because I've shot so many different events, weddings, just getting people in studio and doing headshots for professionals who want to get their online presence at the highest level that they could. And I took what I learned from that and what I learned from being a teacher and a corporate trainer for many, many years. And I added all of that to my experience as a person who was also a door-to-door salesman at one point. And I've combined all of that with all of the learning that I've had over many years by some of the world's leading mentors in the online space. And out of that is the Look Good, Sound Great formula, which is all about helping you to not only look good online, not only sound great online, but to combine that with the way in which you speak to your audience. And what I've decided to do, which is going to be useful to everyone listening to this who wants to be a better speaker, or a coach or an expert who wants to speak to their audience, is there's an event that I've got coming up on May 19th. And in that event, I'm going to give you a really clear roadmap, how to use the Look Good, Sound Great formula to look better. And I'm bringing along an expert speaker, one of the UK's leading speakers, who works mainly with the same audience. We work with female coaches, leaders, and experts. And he's going to show you how you can actually engage your audience through what you say. I'm going to focus on the how to look and sound great using the technical side of it, but he's going to help you to understand how to look good and sound great using your voice, the pace at which you speak and what you say in order to excite your audience. So I really want to encourage you to put that time aside. It's going to start at 4 p.m. British Summer Time. And I'll put the links and details that you can get access to this in the right places. So don't worry, they'll all be there so that you can join me and the guest speaker. I'm not going to mention a name just yet, but you'll have the opportunity to see all the details when you get to the appropriate page. But for now, I want to just encourage you to, when you see that link, click and go and take advantage of this wonderful opportunity that you're going to get to learn about from me, the Look Good, Sound Great formula. So here's where I want to leave this with you. I want to say thank you very much for dropping by. If you managed to catch me live, great. If you didn't, then at the time that you've caught me, I hope that you've enjoyed the presentation in the recording. And I encourage you to keep going. Don't allow for the fact that you don't have everything perfect right now to stop you. Go live, go speak online, learn as much as you can. But just remember that if you're operating at the highest level, if that's what you're saying to your audience, then take advantage of the tools and all of the accelerators that can help you to perform in the way that you know you can. I'm Patrick Nairn, and I want to say thank you very much for joining me. And I look forward to seeing you